in part, and structure. This is a very a very complex picture of what science is. Each nodus is a subject, and each link is a paradigm or a concept. And so we can see that different things in science are related with some others in different fields, in different areas of knowledge. It's a really very complex animal. But science is much more than just a structure. It's very much more important. Science is a process. In a process which concepts evolve, where new interpretations arise, where new data types are found, data accumulates, new relationships are identified, induces cultural change, and knowledge is always incomplete. So, why do we forget when doing the environmental assessment some of the other steps, and why we feel that they have to be brought back into environmental assessment? Because it's not enough to know how, which make efficient the way we do things. We have to remember why we are doing those. And the things that we are interested in environmental assessments are the conduction of a kind of development which respects nature, which makes that way sustainable the development, and also which makes some provisioning for the keeping of human well-being. In all of this, the understanding of how nature works means that we have to have a good causal understanding of how ecosystems function and how the alteration of those mechanisms modify the behavior of the ecosystems. We are far away from understanding that very well. And we are nevertheless modifying the planet ecosystems in a very profound way. We see that some of the signals of that change are in fact quite worse. This is the case of climate change. If we agree and we consider the current accepted opinion that the current climate change is human induced. But what is sustainability? I said that there is no good or not enough grasp of what the mechanisms of ecosystems dynamics, how ecosystem dynamics is really made up, and our understanding of that is not very well developed. Nevertheless, we are very much convinced that the path forward for humanity is sustainable development. And we found that there are more than 100 definitions of sustainability that have been published, and there are more than 500 attempts of creating sets of sustainability indicators. And yet, planetary boundaries are just being recognized. This is a publication that came out just before COP15, where Rockstrom and some other 20 authors recognized and developed a sort of tools to measure, or at least to estimate, where we are on pushing the planetary boundaries out of balance. And pushing these planetary boundaries out of balance means that we are putting the biosphere in risk, because the behavior of the ecosystems beyond certain thresholds could mean no return to the former stage, or the departure from the working of the ecosystems that make the human use and provisioning of environmental services possible. There was another effort on this direction that surely you know well, which is the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, where this links between the different components of the environment, the structure of society, demands of society among the economic systems, the social relationships, but also on the natural systems, really an integrative perspective of how we are interlinked with the ecosystems was developed. This is a sort of model of emerging from that Millennium Assessment. And yet, we don't know a lot of things. And this is a further evaluation made by Norgard. In the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment itself, there was no clear way of developing an understanding on whether we are using ecosystems all the time, and if it is possible to keep the existing ecosystems functioning without depleting them to support human development. It could be that all the development that we see, irrespective of the culture or the place on Earth where it is happening, all the time what it is happening is that we are just taking and eroding the ecosystem's existence stocks available. So it is an open question if it is really possible to keep ecosystems functioning and at the same time supporting 7 billion people in this planet with the demands of goods and services that we are pressing on them. So for this, the environmental assessment is really a public action tool. And it is one where we are combining science as a source of evidence, but also as a way of measuring uncertainty, which is a very important component of what we have in science. In fact, uncertainty and the measurement of it is information about the quality of the evidence. Not because something is uncertain is bad. It's good if we know how uncertain it is. And that's part of the work of science. For political decision, we need that information, but we also need to know what the public is thinking about that, and also informing what science is saying about that, and to see what the public at the end thinks about all the issues. So we have to combine, and it is in fact part of what the environmental assessment is really doing and has been doing all these years. Something which is quite important is this precautionary principle. Accepting that science is not always, maybe never, will be enough to provide precise, complete understanding of all the components of the ecosystems of how they are working. We have to give some space to our beliefs and to act upon them. Causality is all important, is what science is seeking. We are trying to build causal statements in science, which end up being the laws of nature. But in decision making, causal structure has slight differences. One of the issues is that frequently we are in a hurry to make a decision. Once we have a project, once we have the need to develop something, it is urgent to do the project, and probably not enough time to develop the whole understanding of the causal system where the project is going to be developed. That was the original idea, that in an environmental assessment, we could bring teams of scientists to develop an understanding of the causal system where we are going to intervene, and then to do an intervention wisely. But the thing is that the time of developing that understanding is long, and we are in a hurry. So there are, in environmental assessment and in many other public action situations, there are two kinds of causal questions. One is whether X causes Y, which is the plain scientific way of doing things. So we want to understand if X causes Y. In public action, is more like the second way of framing this same statement, is to act as if X causes Y. So we don't know, we don't need to know. We just believe that X causes Y, and then we develop a path of action. And that is what is happening in environmental assessment. The thing is, and probably that's why many people believe that there is not enough science in environmental impacts or environmental assessment, is because the two questions are answered or are addressed in an environmental assessment. So there is a lot of things where the causal system can be devised, developed, and formulated in a coherent argument. But there are so many things that cannot be substantiated. And the instrument has to do a statement of action. And so even if we don't know, we state that we are going to act as if something. So we have a combination of a sort of scientific approach and an approach which is based on a hunch. However,